This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. It is September 23rd, and on this day through the years of sports history, we had a huge upset in college football. A woman suited up and played for an NHL team for the first time, and a baseball anomaly that is kind of serendipitous. That, plus the origin of boneheaded play and a non-sports fun fact about the Godfather movies you may not have known. A lot of ground to cover today, so let's get started with what happened on this day back in 2000 when an unassuming David took on a college football Goliath. The University of Alabama Birmingham was not one of your pedigreed football programs. It had been around only since 1991, when the Blazers started out as a Division III football program. They were reclassified as a 1AA program after 2 years, not because of their overwhelming success. They'd only managed to compile an 11-6-2 record in D3. Instead, it was because they competed in Division I in every other sport that they were required to step up to the D1 level in football. Through the 1999 season, they never managed to win more than 5 games at the 1AA level, and they had only beaten one Division IA school in that span when they beat North Texas in 1995. Well, here in the 2000 season, the Blazers had moved up once again as the newest member of Conference USA, playing at the 1A level, or FBS as it's called now. They'd come close to beating Kansas the week before, but they lost by a field goal scored late in the fourth. Well, on this day, UAB was in Death Valley taking on the LSU Tigers. There was absolutely zero reason to think that anything but an obvious blowout was going to ensue. The Tigers weren't ranked at this point, and they had a new head coach, Nick Saban, in just his third game at the helm. The Tigers were also still stinging from a loss the week prior to 24th-ranked Auburn. But still, LSU, a member of the SEC, playing in one of college football's cathedrals that seated 91,000 at this point, playing their homecoming game. They were not going to lose this one. So, a lot of teams might have been intimidated playing in front of that many people, but the Blazers didn't show any case of nerves. After Daniel Dixon hit LaRon Little on a 24-yard touchdown strike, capping an impressive 78-yard march down the field, UAB led 10-0, and they took that lead into the locker room at halftime. The Tigers added a touchdown and a field goal to tie it up in the second half, but LSU was a bit careless with the football throughout this game, committing 6 turnovers, the costliest coming on their final drive. With 25 seconds left in regulation, quarterback Josh Booty's pass was picked off by Chris Brown, who returned it deep into Tiger territory. And with 4 seconds left, Blazer kicker Rhett Gallego booted the game-winning 32-yard field goal to silence an already stunned Death Valley crowd. The Tigers rebounded the following week with a win over number 11 Tennessee, and they finished as the 22nd ranked team in the country after a win over number 15 Georgia Tech in the Peach Bowl. UAB posted a 7-win season that year in their first go at a full FBS schedule. If you grew up watching football in the 80s and 90s, then you are undoubtedly familiar with John Madden. In fact, you probably remember him more for his analytics and the way he could describe the intricacies of a play-action pass or a safety blitz and do it in an informative and funny way than him as a head football coach of the Oakland Raiders. Well, he stepped away from coaching in January 1979 due to health issues, and CBS hired him soon after to be an analyst with Pat Summerall. There may not have been a more natural fit for the broadcast booth, the man who would become the Picasso of the telestrator, stepping in as an analyst for pro football games. Well, on this day in 1979, in his first year in the booth, he dropped what would become one of his signatures for the first time. Summerall and Madden were calling the Saints and 49ers game on this day.
Conrad got out there a little, and then he looked like he hesitated just before he made the block that sprung Chuck Muncie. Right there was a little hesitation, and then boom, he went in and he got his man, and that was the block that sprung Chuck Muncie.
The first ever Madden boom. Subtle, unplanned, yet well-timed in its usage, and it would soon become a staple of his commentary. On this day in 1992, Manon Rheume became the first woman to play for an NHL team. This was more than just a publicity stunt. Manon could play, and she had worked her whole life to get to this point despite the fact that there was no path for a woman to ever crack the roster of an NHL club. She'd started like a lot of Canadian kids, playing hockey on a backyard rink. Her dad always put the goalie gear on her, and her brothers fired puck after puck at her, practicing their shots, not thinking they would be developing her goalie skills. She was used to being the first girl to do everything. As an 11-year-old, she played a national Pee-wee tournament with 15,000 people in the stands, becoming the first girl to ever play in that tournament. In 1991, she became the first woman to play in the Quebec Junior Hockey League, just a rung below the NHL. It was NHL legend Phil Esposito who gave Manon her shot at the NHL. He saw something in her, and so he invited her to the Tampa Bay Lightning's inaugural training camp in 1992, and she became the first woman to sign a professional contract. Well, on this night, the Lightning played a preseason game against the St. Louis Blues. She played one period, faced 9 shots, and stopped 7 of them. Ultimately, she did not make the roster, but her impact for other women and girls was extraordinary. She made something that had seemed impossible before achievable if you work hard enough. On this day in 1969, Los Angeles Dodger John Miller hit his final home run as a major leaguer. And I can kind of hear your brain going into overdrive, trying to figure out who John Miller is and why you can't seem to remember who he was. Well, there's really no reason that you should know John Miller. He only hit 2 home runs in his brief 2-year career, and those years weren't even consecutive. He played 6 games with the Yankees in 1966, and then he played a year with the Dodgers in 1969. But he is known for one odd thing. In his first plate appearance with the Yankees on September 11, 1966, John Miller hit a home run in a 4-2 win against the Boston Red Sox. On this day in '69, in his final plate appearance of his career, he hit home run number 2 in a loss to Cincinnati. 2 career homers, his first at bat and his last at bat. Have you ever said something was boneheaded, or that was a real boneheaded play? Well, that all got started thanks to what happened on this day back in 1908. The Chicago Cubs and the New York Giants were locked in a tight pennant chase. The 2 teams were tied, and this was the 3rd game of a 4-game series between them. The game was played at New York's Polo Grounds, which plays into a good bit of the controversy from this game. Also, you need to know that the day before, Cubs second baseman Johnny Evers talked with the umpires for this series, Hank O'Day and Bob Emsley, about runners not touching the next bag on a walk-off hit. Now, in essence, men on first and third, batter hits one into the outfield, the runner on third has to touch home plate. That's a given. But the man on first must touch second base before leaving the base path. If he doesn't, it opens it up to an appeal. Evers said he'd be looking for it, and he told the umpires he was going to appeal if he saw it. Well, that exact scenario is what came up in this game. With the score tied at 1 in the bottom of the 9th inning, men on first and third, the Giants' Al Bridwell lined one into the outfield gap and it rolled to the fence. Moose McCormick raced home from third and he touched home. 19-year-old Fred Merkle, the runner on first, figured the game was over, and he trotted off the field to celebrate the win with his teammates without ever touching second base. Evers was watching Merkle like a hawk, and he screamed for the ball to be thrown to him at second base. Several Giants saw what Evers was attempting to do, and they raced onto the field to prevent it. The Giants fans were celebrating too, and they had raced out onto the field. Well, that wasn't atypical. They had to cross the field and exit through the outfield gate to leave anyway, but they were celebrating and marching across the field at the same time. Whether Evers actually touched second to protest the play or not, the ball got ripped out of his hands by a Giants fan and then heaved into the stands. It was pandemonium on the field. The Cubs were arguing that Merkle never touched second base. The umpires did not know exactly what happened either. There were only two of them, and they couldn't see everything. The two men retreated to a cage under the stands to discuss the situation. While they talked, the police worked to redirect the angry mob of fans out of the stadium while also escorting the Cubs players to safety. It was not until the next day that the umpires delivered their verdict. Merkle had not touched second, and therefore, the run didn't score. The game was declared a tie. The decision was upheld, a makeup game was ordered to be played, and the Chicago Cubs won the makeup. So for the TLDR version, which I guess doesn't really work in a podcast, but anyway, if Merkle touches second, run counts, Giants win the game, they take a lead in the standings and go on to win the league and play in the World Series. But because of Merkle's play, they did not. And when Chicago won the makeup, the Cubs ended up winning the pennant and then went on to win the World Series. So this play became known as Merkle's Boner, which thankfully was turned into Bonehead, and now whenever somebody does something to cost their team a game or makes a silly mistake, it is a boneheaded play thanks to what Fred Merkle did on this day in 1908. Sadly for Merkle, this one play overshadowed a really solid career. He played 16 years in the majors, collected nearly 1,600 hits, and he stole 272 bases. On this day in 2001, the NFL resumed games after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. It was not known at the time, but one of those games would impact the NFL for years to come. The 0-1 New York Jets were on the road in Foxborough against the 0-1 New England Patriots. With 5:09 to play in the game and the Jets leading 10-3, quarterback Drew Bledsoe looked downfield, then rolled to his right, and finally tucked it and ran toward the sideline.
So 3rd down and 10 now. Big play for the Patriots. Bledsoe gonna run it. Needs 10 yards. Oh, does he hit? Oh, my.
And the ball, they're going to actually, it looks like they're going to rule that a fumble. And oh, look at Drew.
Yeah, this is more critical than the first down to the Patriots' hopes. Sean Ellis, 92, was carrying his 294 pounds along with Mo Lewis right into the path of Bledsoe.
The hit jarred the ball loose and jarred something loose inside Bledsoe, too. He was rushed to the hospital and treated for internal bleeding that nearly killed him. Bledsoe was a 3-time Pro Bowler. He led the Patriots to Super Bowl 31, and in the spring, he had signed a 10-year, $100 million contract. Bledsoe would miss the rest of the year. Now, what must the Patriot fans have been thinking at that moment? I can only imagine that there were a few who grumbled something like, "We've just lost our starting quarterback, a guy who took us to a Super Bowl, and now we've got this untested kid from Michigan who we got in the 6th round of the draft. Well, there goes the season. We may not win another game this year. Maybe we can tank and draft a QB in the 1st round next spring." Of course, even the most casual football fan knows that Tom Brady took over the New England offense and what happened in the years that followed. In the minutes that followed, though, there was not any sort of Hollywood ending. The game ended with the Jets winning 10-3. However, a team that had gone 5-11 the season before would turn things around, winning their last 6 regular season games and then plow through the playoffs to win Super Bowl 36 with Brady as their starting quarterback. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports. Did you know? In order to make the 1972 film The Godfather, Francis Ford Coppola had to comply with a few mafia demands. Certain members of La Cosa Nostra were concerned about the portrayal of Italian Americans in the movie. Joseph Colombo, head of New York's Colombo crime family, was involved in the script process, and he was adamant that the word mafia never be used. La Cosa Nostra was also involved in casting, and members of the mob hung around during filming. That's all I've got for you today. This and every episode of This Day in Sports History is researched, written, voiced, and produced by me, Steve White. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you back here tomorrow for yet another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com.